I'm Katie.
I'm Vinny.
And this is
Learn Real Good.
That's right, folks. We're here to learn real good. You learned it up there. I think I could have been a morning radio DJ if it wasn't the 3 a.m. wake-up calls.
You get up very early.
So early. I follow a few people from the
morning
Montreal News,
radio,
and I see them posting at 3, 4 in the morning, and it's like, nope.
Yeah, but then you're done your day by like 11 a.m.
Yeah, if you could press a button, or pop a jelly bean, whatever, and be able to wake up that early and feel fantastic, would you?
I would have to go to bed so early.
Yeah, but
I would have to go to bed so early.
You still wouldn't be worth it?
Well, let's say I want 8 hours of sleep, right? And I got to get up at 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
Even if it's easy, I still have to go to bed at 7 p.m.
yeah, which is hilarious because we're both late
sleepers.
Late owls?
Night owls.
Night owls, that's it.
Yeah, late to bed,
late
early
birdies.
to bed.
Yeah, late to bed, late to rise.
Yeah.
Makes us healthy,
Makes us
unwealthy,
snoozy,
and lazy.
and despised.
And despised. Wow.
By the early morning radio DJs, they hate us.
See, if I could have a jelly bean, as long as it wasn't licorice flavored, if I could have a jelly bean non-licorice flavored and be able to wake up early and feel fantastic, I would do it.
You would?
I would love to be a morning person. The times when I have done it, always due to force, like I've had to get up that early. I love it, except for the fact that I have a hard time sleeping
the night before.
You
get anxious about the early wake up.
Yeah, I get in my head of, it's 11 o'clock now. It's 11 o'clock. I have to get up at 5. Oh, it's midnight, isn't it? That's 5 hours of sleep. I can do math. Yeah, and then I don't sleep.
Yeah. And then it's like, 4 o'clock. I better go to sleep soon.
Might as well not sleep. It's 5 o'clock. Yeah, that happens when when I'm scheduled for early classes.
You said jelly bean, and for some reason my brain went to, and I haven't seen these in decades, literal decades, butterscotch lifesavers. Do you remember those?
Of course. I would only in the context of the Christmas book Life that I used to get that for my grandma.
I'm sorry, a Christmas book Lifesavers?
At Christmas, they would have this book of Lifesavers that had two halves.
Yes.
And it would have like 5-ish rolls of Lifesavers. That's the only time I would see butterscotch. It would always be in there, and for sure it was my favorites. That and the just pineapple. Because I will argue to my grave that pineapple is the greatest of the original 5 fruit flavors.
You used to be able to get whole rolls of a single flavor, like all cherry, all pineapple, all butterscotch. Where are they now?
Where are they?
I haven't seen a roll of Lifesavers in years. Do they even make them anymore?
That's a fantastic question.
Did Lifesavers go out of business? Don't make me sad.
Well, this isn't a Lifesavers podcast.
It's true. What is the kind of podcast is it?
It is a science comedy podcast where we shoot the breeze.
Check.
And then we're going to share some facts, and that builds up to the best part of the show when we interview a guest. We have an awesome guest today. I'm excited.
I'm really excited to have a chat.
Shall we move to phase 2?
Yeah, you making this seem really like, all right, let's get this over with.
Me? Regimented? Never. Okay, Vinny, who goes first? Sharing a fact.
I'll go first today.
All right.
Have you heard of...
How these facts start is my favorite. Go on.
Have you heard of the experiment called DART, where they smashed a little satellite into an asteroid?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, the dinosaurs.
Yes.
Famously, maybe not annihilated, but accelerated their extinction due to the asteroid hitting the Yucatan Peninsula.
Yes.
Now, that's a danger. For us humans today, a giant asteroid hitting the Earth would be catastrophic on many levels. Yeah. And so what do? We're like, hey, what if we find out? What would if we found out there was one headed right for us? And so the movie Armageddon, not useful in this case.
I don't want to close my eyes. Yeah.
The famous line where it's easier to send up oil riggers and train them to be astronauts rather than take astronauts and train them to be oil riggers. You can't blow it up. You probably won't be able to blow it up. Like, it's very, very difficult. What you can try to do is deflect it.
Sure.
And so to deflect it, all you have to do is just hit it hard enough, like a pool ball, right? You hit it hard enough and it changes the direction. Humanity is saved. That sounds pretty great. Yep. So they did a test. They built a specific satellite and they picked a small asteroid that was coming nowhere near Earth, and that they weren't going to deflect very much. It was orbiting. It wasn't even orbiting anything. It's just going around like another larger asteroid. Yeah. So it's just sitting there in space, spinning around, totally harmless, and we're going to just give it just a little nudge not even hard enough to knock it out of this orbit, just to alter it, to see just how much, if we really wanted to, could we build a satellite to impact an asteroid, and how much, are our predictions and models good enough to say, oh, this is what's going to change. So they built it, they picked their target, they sent it up, it collided, success. And then they measured that it changed the orbit of this asteroid. And so instead of going around the other asteroid, like that's just two asteroids going around each other, this, after the impact, it was going around 33 minutes slower. So we did change the velocity of this asteroid. But
oh no, big but.
High school project. They had access to an observatory. And for like their science program, they would take this high school students and do observations. So while this was happening, they made the project go, hey, let's take a look at the asteroid that was a collision. And they started doing measurements. And they did a whole bunch of measurements, and they found that the asteroid was going 34 minutes slower than before.
Okay.
So NASA found the initial finding 33 minutes, but these high school students found it 34. They kept trying to take more measurements. And so what happened was they reported it to NASA, and it turns out it was true. Now, it wasn't a full minute. The actual time was 15 seconds slower. But
How are high school students punking NASA like that?
Yeah,
How are they...
Well, they had like access to like a solid, like it was like a 70 centimeter telescope, which is fair size. You can observe a lot of stuff in the solar system with a telescope that has a mirror under a meter. But they were able to do measurements and find that NASA's initial measurement is off, or rather had changed.
So is it better to be 34 minutes off? Isn't the more off you are, the more deflected?
Well, it's a question of prediction and like what's the outcome. And they have a couple of theories of like whether it hit it so hard that it keeps slowing down. One of the theories is that it ejected a bunch of material and then it fell back down to the asteroid, and that slowed it down even more. So they're still figuring out this. It's going to take years to kind of run the analysis on it because you have to do a lot more observations over time. But it was really cool that these high school students did an observation that kind of really affected the results of a NASA program.
Does DART stand for Dinosaur Avenging Retribution Torpedo? Because I think that's probably what it is.
So this whole time I've been talking, have you been coming up with
I've been
that
trying
acronym?
to not forget that.
Yeah, DART.
Yeah.
Then yes, that's exactly what it stands for.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Good job, high school students.
Yeah, so I thought that's a pretty cool high school project result to make an observation that like is contributing to a NASA project.
Wow.
And so hopefully we can deflect an asteroid if it's headed our way.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers
the
crossed.
dinosaurs did nothing. They just sat there.
Their space program was terrible.
Their high school students, though, noticed.
Yes.
Hey,
it's coming our way.
Is an asteroid headed for us? Huh?
Why do you sound like Mickey Mouse?
Everyone sounds like Mickey Mouse.
We're going to get in copyright trouble.
Very cool fact.
All right.
Vinny.
I'd love to hear
Thank
your
you for
fact.
sharing that. Well, Vinny.
Yes. All right. Let's go with the rhetorical question.
What do you know about autoimmune diseases?
Autoimmune disease. Oh, I guess they cause you to attack your own body. Your immune system attacks parts of your body that it probably shouldn't.
Yeah, correct. Basically, how some of your immune cells operate, the ones that learn sort of what we call acquired immunity, is they're faced with a chunk of material. It's supposed to be a chunk of bacteria or a chunk of a virus, a chunk of a foreign object, and they get trained to recognize that, and that's kind of what antibodies are. You make antibodies. Antibodies are like big flashing lights. They'll find that specific shape.
Right.
And then your body will be like, attack that thing.
Okay.
I think it's a bad guy. And yeah, with autoimmune diseases, what happens is your body mistakenly creates antigens, which are the chunks of bad guy material, makes your own materials antigens. And then you make antibodies for it and you attack it thinking that it's a bad guy, but it's you. Obviously a problem. I mean, this is what is behind a lot of diseases like multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, Crohn's disease, psoriasis, hypothyroidism, lots of different diseases. And today, do you know how we typically address autoimmune diseases?
I have no idea.
Suppress the entire immune system.
Okay, so just shut the whole thing down.
Not completely shut down, but really turn down the entire immune system, which obviously sucks.
Yeah.
especially in a time of pandemics, right?
You need your immune system.
Yeah, you need your immune system. That's a really tough thing to turn off. Well,
what is it, Katie?
Hot new development. This is really exciting. This happened about a month ago, and I've been sitting on it. Oh, not even a month ago, a couple weeks ago. Scientists have developed a reverse vaccine. So do you know what is happening with vaccines?
So generally in a vaccine, you get a much weaker version of whatever it is that you're trying to vaccinate against. And then your body is like, this is a foreign body. And then now it can identify when the full strength version of it shows up. It's like, we've seen you before. We know what to do.
Yeah. And do you know what the difference is with an RNA vaccine?
No.
So RNA vaccines, basically, they give you instructions to make the bad thing, the chunk of a bad thing.
Okay.
So it just speeds up the process. Okay, yeah. So what is happening with these reverse vaccines is it basically, there is a natural mechanism in our bodies where in our liver, it can mark cells, typically our own cells, that are sort of dying of natural causes so that our body does not attack it. Because when we attack things, it's usually kind of like an overreaction. There's so many toxic things, toxic messenger chemicals that you end up damaging your body, and that's what a lot of inflammation is, right? So there's a natural mechanism that when things are sort of dying, your own cells are dying of natural causes, that you put a little mark and say, okay, leave that guy. They're going to die on their own.
Okay.
Don't attack.
Okay.
Not worth attacking. Is going to expire. Like it's got its own ticking time bomb. So this reverse vaccine basically is utilizing this technique that we can add to existing cells, the ones that are being attacked by this whatever particular autoimmune disease this person is affected by, and they will no longer attack them, basically curing.
So you basically like put a little flag like do not touch.
Yeah, use vaccines to plant the flags on those materials. And so this was done with mice or rats. Mice or rats, I can't remember.
Sure.
Some rodents. Multiple sclerosis, and it basically cured them.
Get out.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
that's huge.
Right? So, I mean, mice, it takes a while to get from mice to humans, right? And
but the principle sounds reasonable.
Yeah, using natural mechanisms to fight for good.
We're going to hack the body, man.
But that'll be very, very good news for anyone with autoimmune diseases in the future.
And it's something that the anti-vaxxers can get on board with if it's a reverse vaccine.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it's like, it's not a vaccine. It's a reverse vaccine. You can't be against it. You must be for those.
I mean, roll the dice as to how they'll feel about this because, logic won't help you there. But it's very exciting because obviously just suppressing your entire immune system.
And so many people
great.
suffer from it.
And I mean, just think of like the cost of insulin right now.
Yeah.
It would fix.
And people like me who suffer from the very sad disease of hay fever. We were afflicted for years.
Allergies. Yeah, exactly. Yes, I like that you compare your suffering with hay fever to.
Hey, we're the silent majority out there.
Crohn's
we're
disease,
all quietly.
multiple sclerosis.
No one pays attention to us.
Wow, the real victims.
Victims.
With that. Shall we move on?
Yeah. That's a cool fact, Katie.
Thank you. That's enough out of us.
Let's get our guest in here, shall we?
Is it time?
Yeah.
Read the bio, Vin.
You got it. Let's say hi to Zak Kaal. He's currently a master's student at the University of Alberta in the Faculty of Agriculture, Life, and Environmental Science. His master's thesis focuses on upgrading a renewable liquid fuel into a sustainable jet fuel. When Zak isn't in the lab, he enjoys spending time outdoors, volunteering with local communities, and playing soccer. Hello, Zak.
Hello, Vinny and Katie.
Thanks for coming on, Zak.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk fuel.
My favorite topic.
What?
Yeah.
So we're gonna start really simple. What is what?
What is fuel?
What is fuel? Like, what makes fuel? What types of molecules?
Existential.
What
is time? Yeah, what makes fuel?
Fuel, yeah.
Well, anything can be fuel. If you use something to get energy from it, then it's fuel. You could take some firewood. If you burn it, then it's fuel. Gas at the gas station, even alcohol is used as fuel sometimes. So fuel can be anything as well. It just depends on how you use it. Yeah.
And your hopefulness. How badly you want it.
I don't think how badly you want it has a factor.
Well, I know like a lot of fuels are hydrocarbon dense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what is it about what up with carbons and hydrogens that make them good for fuel, for food, or for powering planes?
Basically, I mean, fuel. We use fuel for energy, right? And we get the energy by breaking bonds. So hydrocarbons, when you burn fuel in your car, you're just breaking bonds. And when you break those bonds, there's a net release of energy. And that's how your car moves. So we love our hydrocarbons because they can store and release a lot of energy.
That's really cool.
Nice.
Yeah,
Good job,
good work,
hydrocarbons.
hydrocarbons. Where would we be without them? Yeah. Now, so you're looking at upgrading renewable liquid fuel into a sustainable jet fuel. I'm going to just start with this first part. What is a renewable liquid fuel?
That's a very good question. Renewable liquid fuel is what we call liquid gold. So it's identical to the fuel that you would get from fossils, basically. You dig it up out of the ground, or you can make it in the lab. And when you make it in the lab, it's renewable because we can make as much of it as we want.
Okay.
The way we make it is we use, usually it's food waste that we use. A fun way to think about this is food. There's carbohydrates in food, right?
Right.
Carbohydrates. If you flip those around, it becomes hydrate carbon, so like hydrocarbons. So people usually use fats, which are technically almost chemically identical to fuel. They just have oxygen molecules in there. If we can remove those oxygen molecules, then we have hydrocarbons, which is our gasoline and diesel fuels. So that's our renewable.
Because I've seen like some cars be converted to use like oil used for French fries and stuff like that.
But the first diesel engine, I think, made in the 1890s was designed to run on peanut oil. There was no diesel fuel at that time, so that even in the demonstration,
that makes sense.
It was peanut oil.
And we know in the future from Back to the Future that we can stick banana peels
into
Mr. Fusion, and that will power our cars, correct?
Yeah.
Not too far away.
So how do you remove the oxygens? Like light it, put a little spark by it, burn off that oxygen, hope the whole thing doesn't explode? How do you get rid of oxygen?
Kind of. You just put it under high temperature, high pressure, and that's
easy.
Pretty much it.
Oxygen pops right off. You're done.
So why aren't we doing this for all of our fuel now? Taking all of our compost heaps and making it into reusable fuel.
Yeah, is the process for this more energy intensive than it gets out of it?
The reason is we don't really have enough oil to go around. We don't have enough used cooking oil to go around to make these things. So everyone is trying to figure out how to change a specific feedstock or a specific waste into a renewable fuel. The most interesting one we've done is we've taken poultry fat or chicken fat, and we've turned that into fuel, and I'm trying to turn that into jet fuel. So a chicken isn't a flightless bird. It's a non-flight bird, and I'm trying to make it help us take flight.
Yeah.
And that's your main motivation is for the chicken's egos to feel like they can fly too in a way.
Yeah. It's really for the poetic irony.
So I really don't know the answer to this. Is the fuel in a jet different for the fuel in a car?
That's a good question.
Yeah, good question.
Very, very, because if you take diesel fuel, like you take a bus, the fuel in a bus could power a jet, but the problem is when the jet takes off and you get to negative 70 degrees Celsius, that fuel would freeze. And once that bus fuel freezes, plane's coming down faster than it went up.
Oh no.
Yeah.
We don't want that.
So
the fuel has to not freeze. That's like a big factor, I guess.
That's, I want to say 80% of the difference between what the fuel the bus uses and the fuel the jet uses.
Okay.
It's the freezing point.
And so how does that get there? Like, do you just add like antifreeze to it?
I wish it was that easy.
Pour it in a bucket.
Yeah, bus fuel plus a jug of antifreeze. You're good to go.
If it were that easy, I'd have been done my thesis in 2 months.
I've got a great idea.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I saved you all this time. All right, let's wrap it up here.
1 page.
You fools! We had it sitting in front of us this whole time.
Yeah, how do we miss it, right? But there's actually limits because jet fuel does have some antifreeze in it, but there's limits as to how much you can add in there.
Right.
So back in the day, they used to add lead to help lower the freezing point, but obviously you can't do that anymore.
Oh.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why leaded fuel was a thing. But you can't do that anymore. So what they do now is they do something called isomerization of the fuel. And that's basically if you take one fuel molecule with 8 carbons, isomerization changes its shape without changing the number of carbons in there. So you still have 8 carbons, except instead of it being for example, straight chain fuel molecule, it becomes very jagged and branched. We call it a branch chain molecule.
Interesting.
Oh, that's pretty analogous to like the difference between saturated and unsaturated fat, right?
Very close. That's why we have solid butter but liquid oil. Similar, not exactly analogous, but yeah.
Right. That's cool.
So how do you cause that isomerization?
That is the question that I've been trying to figure out for the past 2 years now.
Have you tried antifreeze?
Yes, because that'd be a happy coincidence.
I feel like, it's worth a shot.
The way that we do this is we try catalysis. So I'm trying to figure out what the perfect catalyst is to take in the molecule, isomerize it, and then give us a branched molecule. But at the same time, you don't want a catalyst that's too strong, for the lack of better words, because if you start out with an 8-carbon molecule, you also run the risk of breaking it into 4 2-carbon molecules, and then it's worthless. You just ruin the fuel. Yeah.
Wow. So it's like a pretty delicate task here.
It is. There's a sweet spot, if you will.
All right.
Do you know of any natural mechanisms? Like, are there animals or plants or other industries that do this already? Like, to use as sort of a proof of principle?
There are, companies, the big oil and gas companies already do isomerization, but they use a lot of hydrogen, which is not very sustainable at the moment. And they also use a lot of platinum, which is very expensive. So we're trying to lower costs. Yeah, so we're trying to lower the cost so that the cost of our renewable jet fuel is similar to what we have conventionally.
Oh, wow. That's a big challenge.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
And so right now you're working with chicken fat.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my first question is,
delicious.
Well, yeah, where are you getting this from?
Chicken.
KFC.
We're getting it from chickens, obviously. But no, the poultry industry doesn't really know what to do with its chicken fat. So
interesting.
They can pay to throw it away, or they can give us some of it. If we can turn it into jet fuel, then we've given them an opportunity. We've given value to their waste product. So they're helping us out right now in the hopes that we can figure something out and then help them out. Give them give value to their product.
You're turning like something that was waste before into something that has value and they can sell it.
And it benefits them, yes, exactly. Because who really buys chicken fat?
Why are poultry farms accumulating chicken fat? Don't they just sell the don't they just sell the chicken?
No, but they probably like trim it, the chicken, when it's being
Oh, I guess they're not selling it the whole thing.
No,
with its feathers on.
I don't know if you've been to a grocery store lately, Katie.
I'm a vegetarian, to be fair.
You still see the meat department. No,
there might be feathers.
Yeah, there might be feathers. All right. Well, there aren't any.
So what is a day like in the lab for you, Zach? Are you like, oh, here's this, I'm gonna pour this chemical on, didn't I summarize? Like, what are you doing sort of on the day?
Yeah, do you use any bubbling beakers or spirally tubes?
That's what I thought I'd be using when I first joined. But I've used the spirally tubes once, so that's off my bucket list at least. No 2 days.
Was it for chicken fat transport?
It was for distillation. But I don't think any 2 days at the lab are the same, really. Every day is different. But in general, you'd wake up, head to the lab, and then I'd run an experiment on Monday. And it would take me, running the experiment would take a day or two. I'd try out a different combination of catalyst and feedstock. And then I'd spend the next 4 days trying to analyze what I made. Trying to see if what I made is bringing us closer to jet fuel or taking us further.
And what kind of tests do you do to check that? Like, do you like put it under the microscope? Like, how do you check like what the isomer looks like?
It's a very hard task to do, but there's a bunch of different equipment we can use. My favorite one to use is the gas. It's called GC gas chromatography, and I prep my sample. I add some of my sample. I add some solvent, usually carbon disulfide, and then an internal standard. Run it in the gas chromatograph, and it separates. Because in our fuel, we can have upwards of 1,000 components, all in one milliliter of our fuel. So what the gas chromatograph does is it separates the compounds of the fuel into each constituent compound. So then I can see 1,000 peaks, but I don't have to see them all at the same time. It separates them for me. And then I just label each peak to see what I've got, what I don't have, and the differences I have between where I started and where I am now.
Wow.
And isomers will look different even though they're chemically the same?
Yes, isomers will look different because they separate based on time. So some things elute, we say some things leave the gas chromatograph at 1 minute, some things at 2 minutes, and it goes down to the seconds. Huh. So depending based on the
amazing.
time.
Hey, what's going on? We are Pull the Plug Podcast with myself, Mrs. Godzilla.
And me, Justin G.
Myself, Justin Briner.
And me, Sarah M.
Pull the Plug Podcast, it's a place where music fans, pop culture nerds, and people who love dick jokes come together each week.
A place of worship, if you will.
Check us out at ptppodcast.com for all your dick needs.
And how close are you getting? Like, what, like... When you're like, oh, we did it, you're gonna be like, that's it, you're done, or you're like, oh, we're getting closer this way. Oh, this is not promising. Abandon ship.
We're getting really close, at least in the batch scale, because the way these things go is you start very, very small. You start with 1-2 milliliter proof of concept, and then you scale up to 100 milliliter flow reactor. And then you scale up to 1 liter, 5 liter, and then eventually you get to the pilot plant scale, 100 liters plus. So right now we're almost done the 1 to 2 milliliter proof of concept phase. So we're getting there. In maybe 2 or 3 weeks, we're gonna get started on our flow reactor, 100 mils.
Wow!
But then everything speeds up after that. So I'd say we're getting really close. So I'm excited.
That's really cool.
Yeah. It made me think of like this sounds exciting. Like, why don't we should live stream experiments. I guess then people could publish what we're doing. Some of the stuff is like really cool. I wish you could like watch these things in action.
Like, remember webcams? Remember when webcams was a thing? Like webcam on a coffee pod or someone's street.
An owl nest.
An owl nest.
Bird nests.
Yeah, bird nests are always cool.
Yeah, that'd be
so
cool.
So why not
science.
some scientists, some grad students cam?
Yeah. Oh man.
Grad cam.
So how far away do you think we are from sustainable fuels being like the main thing that we use? Like 10 years off, 20 years off, we'll be dead by then?
Sounds like a couple weeks.
I really wish it was, but I mean, right now, if you fly into LAX, there's a good chance that some of the fuel that you use on your flight into or out of LAX does have sustainable aviation fuel on it. So we're not that far away. If you drive in Canada, in most provinces, and you fill your gas up at any Canadian gas station, part of that fuel is renewable, because there's mandates now, that every fuel provider has to provide 2% to 5%, I'm not really sure, renewable fuel in their conventional fuel. So it's not how far away are we from sustainable fuel, it's how far away are we from 100% sustainable fuel.
Oh, interesting. So is this the ethanol I see labeled?
Yeah, the ethanol is a renewable fuel to add to gasoline for regular cars, yeah.
Wow. Okay. And so I guess there's hopefully a day coming where we're just taking all our food waste, converting it into hydrocarbon fuel for our cars and jets and lawnmowers or whatever.
Yeah, but like I said, I don't think we have enough food waste to supply our demand for hydrocarbons, yeah.
That's shocking, considering how much food waste. Do you think, like, I look at that compost container we've got, I can't believe that's not enough.
Well, you think about how much fuel it takes to fill up a car, right? Like, I'm not filling it up with a liter. I fill up the car. Car, depending on what you have, it's like 30, 40, 50, I guess 60 if you have like a mega car or some kind.
Yeah, there's too much lettuce in that compost. Are you going to advocate for an all-chicken diet, Zach, so that we can increase the amount of chicken fat in our compost?
If the vegans don't shoot me, yeah.
Yeah. I think we're supposed to go away from meat in the sustainable diet.
Are there other differences with this sustainable fuel? Like, are there less additives, or is it otherwise pretty much the same?
It's pretty much the same because it's identical to what we have in the ground. It does burn a little bit cleaner, and you do have better control of what gets inside it because you are again making it in the lab.
Right. And it also smells great coming out.
It doesn't smell like fried chicken, I'll tell you that.
That's disappointing.
Yeah, that is disappointing.
Can you imagine all these cars smelling like KFC? That'd be fantastic.
You're really sponsored by KFC today.
It's the only chicken establishment I can think of right now.
So Zach, why jet fuel in particular? Why not car fuel?
Car fuel, we already have our car fuel methods. We've already patented it. We've commercialized it. So there's not much to innovate on in that area. But a lot, even Canada and the world right now is focused, and they're chasing a sustainable jet fuel because it's proven very, very hard to achieve. The US has goals by 2050. Canada released 8 months ago their sustainable aviation fuel plan, their aviation sector net zero goal by 2050, I believe. So there's a lot of goals that we haven't reached yet in that regard. So that's why. And
we're still burning hydrocarbons, so I'm assuming a byproduct is always going to be CO2.
Yes, but that CO2 is inevitably going to be released, whether it gets released at the landfill or it gets released when we use it to do something meaningful like flying or connecting places.
That's a really good argument because that's not true for fossil fuels.
Fossil fuel stays in the ground if you don't burn it, whereas the food that we waste is going to just decompose.
And it sometimes decomposes to methane, which is even worse than CO2.
Yeah.
27 times.
So we're really doing a favor by burning these.
I mean, yeah.
In fact, we have to do it. We have to burn it to save the planet.
You know, Vinny's going to just set fire to our compost bin after this recording.
I'm helping people.
It's only the sustainable thing to do.
Yeah, you're welcome.
This master's student agrees. It's the right thing to do.
But yeah, that's a great argument. Like, I mean, look, we don't have an easy substitute for jet fuel anytime soon. Like, electric cars, not bad. They do pretty good. But we're not getting electric planes, like commercial electric planes. That charge doesn't exist yet. The batteries would be so heavy. Yeah, so I can't see us having, and we're not giving up airplanes.
No way are we ever giving up, because no
way. Not if Zach has anything to say about it.
No, because you think about it, a lot of goods and services need to be delivered by airplanes. Sometimes you say we could do without these goods and services. We could take trains. We don't need that air-flown produce.
Right.
But what about islands? Islands are places too. They need to be connected with timely goods and services. So.
Yep.
That's a good point. We always think of like the gas used by planes as people traveling, right? But it's a lot more to do with trade of goods.
Isolated communities that sometimes it's just the only way they get stuff. Yeah, I think it's we can argue whether we can reduce the amount of flights that happen. That's fine, but what we can also do is just make the footprint of it better.
Yeah.
So one challenge with jet fuel is the temperature thing. Are there other challenges when designing that fuel, or is it really just the temperature difference that's the big issue?
It really boils down to the temperature issue and when it freezes, because if the fuel freezes 30,000 feet in the air, that's a big problem.
Yeah. Oops. Are there other fuels? We talked about cars and planes, but are there other fuels like the submarine fuel that are like
or
really challenging to design?
But boats are an interesting thing. To the best of my knowledge, they're already they don't contribute a lot to climate change. So there's not much focus on ships and renewable fuels for them. But I know a lot of research is going into methanol, which is a different type of alcohol to fuel ships. And I believe a couple years ago, the first ship to ever be powered 100% by methanol actually set sail.
Oh,
so it's very interesting to see where every type of fuel is now trying to become more sustainable, more renewable.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
You mentioned that if the fuel, like when you're working with your isomerization, if you accidentally break the molecules into being 4 carbons long, they're useless. Why is that? Is there like a range of carbon lengths that are useful, and beyond that they're just, yeah, like why would they no longer work?
There actually is very astute point. When the carbon chains get too short, you get to 3 or 4 carbons, that's when they start to become gas and no longer liquid. And once they're gas, you can't really burn them. I mean, you can burn them, but there's no way of you to transport them from point A to point B.
Right.
If they get too long, Have you ever seen Vaseline?
Yeah.
It's called petroleum jelly. Why is it called petroleum jelly? Because it's just very long chains of petroleum.
Oh, wow.
So long chains are solid. Medium chains are liquid. Short chains are gas. So you don't want it to be too short where it's gas. You don't want it to be too long where it's solid. You want it at the
It's all about the sweet spot.
All about the
So
sweet
what's that? Let's guess, Vinny. Let's guess what the range in carbons is.
Yeah, for Vaseline.
Liquid.
2 to 4.
Well, no, you said 4 is bad, so I'm going to.
Oh, for
guess,
liquid. Oh, yeah, that would be
It tends
gas.
to be in even numbers for
Yeah.
reasons I don't know, but I'm going to guess 6 to 22.
I'll say 6 to 16.
6 to 22 is very, very accurate. It's shockingly accurate. It's actually, I would say, C5 to C24, but that's shockingly accurate. It also depends on what room temperature is, right?
I know the
Right,
range
right.
and length of fatty acids goes to about 22. I was just using that as a point of reference. I had no idea if it was
You
a liquid
used your
thing.
biology
well,
information.
I've got some moves.
Oh, boy. All right. Well, you win this round, Katie.
And it's recorded.
So, like, how did you get into this? Did you grow up flying airplanes or having
You were 4.
hanging out with chickens? I feel bad for these chickens. I want to make them fly.
Which came first, the chicken or the plane? That's what we're asking.
It's very interesting how I got into this. I was born and raised in North Africa, in Libya, and over there our economy relies heavily on oil and gas. So I always thought about, and I was taught as a kid that oil and gas was going to run out at some point, and that's what I grew up believing.
Right.
So I wanted to figure out an alternative for oil and gas while still being able to, use cars, use trucks, use planes. When I graduated high school, I moved to Malaysia, did my undergrad there in environmental science. And during my 3rd or 4th year, I'd totally forgotten all about renewable fuels and oil and gas by my 3rd or 4th year there. But in my 4th year, I had to do an undergrad thesis, and my supervisor told me about this thing called biodiesel. And he told me it's diesel that doesn't come from the ground. And I was mind blown. And ever since then, I've been chasing the dragon, and I ended up doing my master's in biodiesel. Is an old term. It's not, people don't like to use it anymore. So they say renewable liquid fuel. And I found this position at the U of A, and it was right up my alley, and I just had to grab it.
Wow. Because that faculty is one that I have not heard that combination of nouns before. It may be a U of A special. Like, what was your undergrad background in? Like, because I could see you being from engineering or chemistry or biology. Like, what area were
for
you
your
in
undergrad?
before?
Everyone at the U of A thinks our faculty is the faculty where, miscellaneous topics are put. So there's not one focus. In my faculty, people study material science, like textiles. We study renewable fuels. We study food. We study pretty much everything. So that's why our faculty gets a lot of, jokes made about. But it's interesting because you get to meet people doing a lot of different things, and it makes collaborating very easy.
Yeah, that's true. It's innately interdisciplinary.
For sure.
But your undergrad background was in what?
Environmental science and management.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it was all about the environment.
Were you always interested in science, though? You were always interested in fuels, but were you like a sciencey little kid?
Oh, I loved science. My favorite subject in school was chemistry, in fact. But once I started my undergrad, I didn't take I actually took one chemistry course in the 4 years of my undergrad. So when I joined my master's, I loved learning about renewable liquid fuels, but then I realized that I didn't know enough chemistry, so I had to get to grinding.
Yeah.
I take it that undergrad chemistry was an unpleasant experience, and you're like one and done. That's kind of what happened to me.
Avoid it at all costs.
Yeah.
I also went into undergrad with chemistry being my favorite of the sciences and had an unpleasant organic chemistry experience. I was like, I'm out.
I don't think they're ever pleasant, organic chemistry experiences.
Yeah. My major error was I didn't spend the $20 on the model kit, and I realized pretty quickly that that's pretty useful. Like in the exam, I was looking around, everyone was building the molecules, and I'm like, that would be handy right about now. $20, Katie. Maybe should have done that.
I'd only heard of it by reputation, and I was like, that is not for me. Organic chemistry is a whole other world, man.
Tough one. So where do you think you're going to work in industry? Like, I know this is early on in your academic career, but where do you see ideally your career headed, Zach?
That's a question I ask myself almost every day, and a lot of grad students ask themselves a lot of the time.
Of course.
I thought long and hard about it, and I think the best solution is to have an open mind. So some days I feel like I want to continue in academia. Other days I want to go into industry. Other days I want to go into policy and analysis with the government.
Mm-hmm.
So, depends on the day, depends on the mood. But
yeah. Keep your options open, Zach.
Yeah.
Keep your options open.
Best way to
That's
do.
always a good thing to do. I think that's another benefit of having like an interdisciplinary faculty, right? You have all these people going in different directions and makes it sort of easier to see the different doors that are open to you. It's not like everyone goes to med school or something like that where the roads seem narrow and not as forked.
Yeah. And there are a lot of options when you're doing your grad work.
That's
At the end of the day, network, right? It's who you know. That's how you find out about opportunities. That's how you get opportunities. Yeah. Like that's the key more than anything.
And you can always ask people who've done stuff and ask them about their experiences, and
absolutely,
you get to live a little bit without investing too much of your time going down one path. Yeah.
Find out what they did.
Yeah.
Now, outside the lab, Zach, you say you like spending time outdoors. You're out in Edmonton, where it's very cold 6 months of the year. What sort of outdoor things do you like to keep yourself busy with?
There's nothing better than a negative 30 degrees Celsius walk at like 10 p.m. No one is out, and you have the whole city to yourself. You just
That's true.
7 layers and AirPods, some music, and you walk down the street. It's beautiful.
I learned to love the Edmonton winters. For me, it was I'm a mascara wearer, and in the -30, the eyelashes would freeze, and it was a crazy mess. If it wasn't for that, I would have been a bigger fan.
Yeah, I like winter. I love a good -30 when it's nice and cold out.
It gets way colder in Edmonton than it ever gets here. It is another planet. In fact, I remember once being there waiting for a shuttle to the airport. And my brother texted me to tell me that at that moment in time, it was colder in Edmonton than on the moon. And that's when I realized maybe too cold here. It was -57.
I think you mean Mars.
Oh, Mars.
Yeah,
Sorry.
because the moon is even colder.
Well,
it doesn't
I'm
have an
sorry.
atmosphere.
I'm sorry. It seems like Mars would be colder.
Mars is nice and toasty compared to Edmonton.
And what sort of volunteering do you do, Zach?
Food bank. That's a very important issue to me because I studied environmental science. Sustainability, you can't have sustainability without food security. So a lot of students, especially grad students, find it hard to, have a healthy and sustainable supply of food. So I volunteer at the food bank once or twice a week, trying to, give back.
Amazing, Zach.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
Well, Zach, I think that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for taking time away from the chickens to tell us all about your really important research, and best of luck.
Thank you very much.
It really sounds really cool.
Thank you for having me.
That was very cool.
That was awesome. Wow. Yeah, I guess it makes sense to just try to keep as much of the hydrocarbons in the ground as possible and just find alternative sources.
And it's look, would it be nice to not burn any fuel and not contribute more to CO2? Of course. But let's be honest with ourselves, it's not happening.
Not anytime soon. Maybe one day we'll figure it all out and be like, oh, just, put the banana peel in Mr. Fusion and you're good to go. But we're not there yet. We do need to transition off of it.
And it's a good point that the
food waste,
the CO2, the chemicals are going to be released from that anyway, right? If you dump it in a landfill, and it could even be worse.
There's a lot of energy that gets wasted in the system, and we're gonna fix that.
We are. I think Zach is.
Well, by we, I mean Zach.
You just, for now, you'll just continue to light your compost on fire because you think that that's going to help.
And I know it is.
Well, that's it. We learned a lot today.
Yeah.
We learned about
autoimmune,
DART.
Yeah.
And inverse vaccines.
Reverse vaccines.
Inverse vaccines.
Reverse vaccines.
I forget which one it is.
Auto reverso. Double backup.
And we learned a lot about how to make sustainable fuels.
That's very cool. Yeah. Sounds like a very painstaking process.
Trial and error. That's so much of science is like that.
For sure. I mean, you're making educated guesses and you have to do all the measurements, but yeah, you got to be systematic.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Well, Vin, do you want to send people off on our socials?
I would love to send people out on the soch. If you're looking to follow us on social media, you can check us out on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, and on YouTube at LRG Pod, or on YouTube, just look up Learn Real Good. We have some short video clips there. And if you want to contact us, if you are a grad student or would know a grad student who might want to be on the show, have them send us an email at learnrealgoodpodcast@gmail.com. That's learnrealgoodpodcast@gmail.com. Even if you're a fan and you want to say, hey, I really like your show.
It's never happened.
So you can send that there too. We'll accept fan mail, even if it's Katie's mom.
Yes, Mom, please send us fan mail. And if you enjoy the show, you can rate, review, subscribe.
Yeah, tell a friend.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Tell your friends wherever you get your friends.
Exactly. Well, that's it for us. Thank you, Vinny.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you for listening. See you next time on
Learn Real Good.
Real Good. Remember our jingle?
Yeah.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.